Now, chances are you've heard of Nebraska Farm Bureau. You and your family may even be part of the organization's 60,000 members. Nebraska Farm Bureau's goal is simple: help make life better for farmers and ranchers through service, education, and legislation. Nebraska Farm Bureau President Steve Nelson joined me to explain more about the organization and some initiatives being worked on now.
It really has an interesting history, but most importantly, we have a very long history. This is our 101st year of Nebraska Farm Bureau here in the state of Nebraska. And the upcoming year in 2019 will be the 100th year for American Farm Bureau. We're also affiliated with American Farm Bureau. There are farm bureaus in all 50 states, along with Puerto Rico. In Nebraska, our history, of course, goes back over 100 years, and it really connects to the Extension Service or the Extension Program. And at that time, there was a need to have a sponsoring organization for the Extension Service in each county, and that was the initial role that farm bureaus, county farm bureaus, performed and served that purpose to be the sponsoring organization for a county agent in each county. And so that's where history really began.
Okay, and so what do you see as some of the biggest issues that are impacting Nebraska farmers right now?
Sure. Well, I think the number one issue is the economy in general. We have very tight margins in everything that we grow and raise in the state of Nebraska, and so those tight margins affect how farmers and ranchers are not only able to survive and continue to produce food, not just for their families, but for the needs of people all around the world. But it's also about how they continue to sustain their business into the future. And so economy is number one, and a lot of the issues then that we talk about after that really affect the farm economy. Sure. We would have trade, a lot of issues surrounding trade. Taxes are very important, certainly here in Nebraska. We have an over-reliance on property tax that we've been dealing with for some time, and so that's an important issue. Water is always extremely important in the state of Nebraska because of our climate and the relatively low amount of rainfall that we get throughout the year. So there's just lots of things that are out there. One other thing that I should mention is broadband. There are a lot of issues with related to rural broadband today, not only for farmers and ranchers to be able to take advantage of the technologies that are available today, but also it affects the way of life in rural areas, and for young people wanting to come back to the farm or ranch, or wanting to have some kind of business on the farm or ranch or in a rural area without good broadband service. It makes some of those things just impossible, and so that's another area that's very important.
And what are some of the other goals that Farm Bureau is working on as we head into 2019?
Sure. Well, our number one policy-related goal from a state standpoint, at least, would be to find property tax relief and to have property tax reform. Farmers and ranchers are particularly affected by high property taxes and by the load that property tax carries in funding education here in the state of Nebraska, because agriculture is land intensive. It takes land to be in the farming and ranching business, and so while property taxes are high for everyone, farmers and ranchers have been particularly affected by this, and we've been working on this for a number of years. It's probably always been an issue, at least in the last generation or two. It's been an issue, but the problem has continued to get worse, and so we continue to work to find solutions with the state legislature. So that's probably our number one state issue. Of course, broadband I mentioned before, and then probably at the national level, of course, there's the discussion related to the Farm Bill and the importance of getting the Farm Bill passed on time to maintain crop insurance in the Farm Bill. Those things that probably most everyone is aware of, and you've probably talked about before. I think then the other area that we know is so important, it relates to trade. About a third of everything that we grow and raise in Nebraska comes from trade, as from a gross revenue perspective, comes from trade. Different commodities would be slightly different than that, but it's clear that trade is extremely important to farmers and ranchers in the state of Nebraska. And as we've seen over the years, that whenever agriculture is doing well in the state, the rest of the state does well, and so it's important to the entire state of Nebraska. And so we continue to work with the administration to make sure that we have good trade deals, that we continue to wrap up trade discussions that are there. But that is something that's very important to the future of farming and ranching as well.
And annual meetings coming up too, right?
Yes, that's right. So in the first week of December, we have our annual meeting. That's a normal time of year, and that's when we come together to really culminate that policy development process. We also do some educational seminars during the annual meeting. We elect the board of directors there. The delegates do that, and again, as I said, our board is made up of farmers and ranchers who are elected by those delegates, so that's a very important part of what we do as well. And so lots of good discussions about policy there.
We'll have part 2 of our interview with Steve next week. He'll talk about his role as president and what he thinks makes farming in Nebraska so unique.